The ground shook long before the enemy was visible. It was not the sound of thunder, nor the distant rumble of storms, but something heavier, mechanical, alive in its own way, the roar of tanks rolling toward the horizon. Private Marco Sorin gripped the hatch of his T-92 Ironclad, sweat sliding down his temple despite the biting cold. Inside the steel beast, the air smelled of oil, sweat, and the faint tang of gunpowder. "Eyes sharp," barked Captain Ilyanov through the headset. "They'll come fast. Their armor is heavier, but their discipline is soft. We hold the line here, or we don't go home at all." Marco's throat tightened. This wasn't his first battle, but it felt different. Rumors had swirled that the enemy had deployed their new Titan-class tanks, monsters of steel and firepower that dwarfed anything his battalion had faced. The landscape ahead was barren, a scarred plain littered with the wreckage of past clashes. Smoke curled from distant craters. Every soldier inside the tank could feel it. The silence before the storm was cracking. Then it came. The first shell screamed overhead, slamming into the earth with a deafening eruption. Dirt and fire blasted skyward. Over the ridge, shadows emerged, then forms, colossal tanks with jagged armor plates, their cannons swiveling like the heads of beasts sniffing out prey. The clash of steel beasts was about to begin. The first volley tore across the battlefield. Enemy shells struck the earth, spewing molten dirt over the ironclads. Marco braced himself as his tank rocked violently. "Loader, heat round!" Ilyanov shouted. The loader, Pavel, rammed a glowing shell into the breach. "Loaded! Fire!" The gunner squeezed the trigger, and the ironclad's main cannon thundered, spitting fire that slammed into an enemy tank. Smoke burst from its side, but it didn't stop. Instead, the Titan turned, its own cannon belching flame, sending a shell screaming directly at them. The explosion was blinding. The ironclad lurched sideways, tracks grinding against scorched earth. "Hit on the right side." "Armor's holding," shouted Pavel. Marco felt his heart hammering against his ribs. The Titan kept advancing, its massive silhouette framed by fire and dust. More of them rolled forward behind it, forming a wall of advancing steel. The ironclads surged to meet them, engines roaring, treads tearing through the battlefield. Shells crisscrossed the plain, fireballs erupting where shots found their mark. The battlefield became a living furnace, metal shrieking, earth exploding, men shouting through radios that crackled with static and fear. Marco swung his machine gun toward the infantry creeping behind the Titans. Tracer rounds cut through the smoke, mowing down shadows, but it felt like trying to hold back an ocean with a bucket. Still, the ironclads pressed on. Every man inside knew the stakes. If they broke, the Titans would smash through and crush everything behind them. "This isn't war," Marco muttered to himself as another explosion rocked them. "This is beasts devouring beasts." Hours seemed to collapse into minutes. The clash raged on, relentless. Wrecked tanks burned in twisted heaps, their hulks glowing orange in the firestorm. Yet neither side yielded. Captain Ilyanov's voice rang sharp in the chaos. "Enemy Titan on the left flank. Marco, cover fire. Gunner, aim for its lower hull. Now." The ironclad swiveled, cannon aligning. The shot roared, slamming into the Titan's belly. For a moment, the monster slowed, smoke gushing from its undercarriage. "Hit confirmed," Pavel shouted. But the Titan refused to die. It roared forward, turret rotating toward them. Its shell smashed into a nearby ironclad, obliterating it in a fireball that lit the entire plain. The shockwave rattled Marco's teeth. "God help them," Marco whispered, gripping his machine gun. The battle turned desperate. Ironclads rammed into Titans at close range, steel grinding against steel, sparks showering as if the battlefield itself was ablaze with fury. Crews fired point-blank, shells detonating at suicidal distances. Marco's tank tore through mud and fire, slamming into a smaller enemy unit. Their cannon barked again, shattering its armor. For a moment, Marco thought the monster might collapse, then it erupted in flames, engulfing its crew in a pyre. The ironclad was bleeding, armor dented, engine groaning, but still it fought. "Keep pushing," Ilyanov roared. "For every one of us they kill, we take 3 of them down." Above, the sky had darkened, not from weather but from smoke. Flames reflected in Marco's visor, making it look as though the heavens themselves were burning. Steel beasts clashed, and men became shadows inside their armor. By dusk, the battlefield was unrecognizable. Charred wrecks smoldered like corpses of fallen giants. Yet the Titans still advanced, though fewer now, their movements slower, scarred by hours of brutal combat. Inside the Ironclad, exhaustion clung to the crew like a second skin. Pavel's hands were raw from loading shells, the gunner's voice hoarse from shouting coordinates, and Marco's vision blurred from smoke and sweat. "We can't take much more," Pavel rasped. "Neither can they," Ilyanov replied, staring through the cracked periscope. His tone carried no fear, only grim resolve. Ahead, the largest Titan yet lumbered into view. Its turret gleamed with fresh plating, its cannon thicker than a man's torso. Behind it, enemy infantry rallied, sensing their beast would break the Ironclad's will. "This is it," Ilyanov said quietly. "The beast that decides who lives tonight." The Ironclad roared forward, engines screaming, every man inside clinging to hope as much as to steel. Marco raked the infantry with fire, mowing them down as sparks danced off the Titan's armor. "Load sabot," Ilyanov barked. Pavel slammed in the armor-piercing shell. "Fire!" The shot struck dead center and bounced off. The Titan kept coming, cannon lowering toward them like the maw of a dragon. Again. Another round fired. Sparks, smoke, but the monster lived. The Titan's cannon ignited. The shell tore through the air. For a heartbeat, Marco thought it was over. Then, with a scream of metal, the Ironclad lurched aside, the shell skimming past to annihilate the ground behind them. "Flank it!" Ilyanov roared. "Close the distance!" The Ironclad charged, treads tearing the earth. They came alongside the Titan, so close Marco could see the scorch marks along its hull. At this range, there was no room for hesitation. Pavel, last shell. Loaded. Fired. The blast tore into the Titan's side. For a moment, silence. Then fire erupted from its belly, flames engulfing it as its ammunition cooked off in a chain of explosions. The Titan howled its death cry, collapsing in a storm of fire and twisted steel. The battlefield froze, then erupted in cheers from the surviving Ironclads. The beast was dead. The line had held. Night fell over the plain, casting long shadows across the burning carcasses of machines. Marco sat inside the Ironclad, trembling hands resting on the still warm hatch. They had survived, but at what cost? The field was a graveyard of men and monsters alike, their steel bones glowing in the night. Captain Ilyanov's voice crackled softly in the headset. "Remember this, boys. We were not just men today. We were the roar of tanks, the clash of steel beasts. And we did not break." Marco closed his eyes, hearing the distant echoes of the battle in the silence that followed. The ground still trembled, not from engines, but from the memory of them.